Willy Wonka beta tape. A lost episode creepypasta story. I had heard of many stories and rumors that there was a secret hidden story behind the Willy Wonka story, but I had never really believed them. I thought of them as nothing more than mere jokes or fan fiction. You know how people likes to take things that are normally thought to be having let's go like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and label Wonka as a pedophile or some shit like that. I never took anything like that seriously. I just thought them to be things people with active, avid, creative minds have come up with. To me, the Wonka story was nothing more than a happy and innocent story made for children to enjoy. At least that was what I thought until the day I said I would actually find a way to find out for myself. I decided to mail someone who was once acquainted with Doll. I was told not to give anything about this person away, just to see if any of this was true. Considering nearly everyone had seen something about this story, obviously having some sort of subtext about it, I thought I would check to be sure. I was told in the mail, and I quote, "You seem interested in this subject. Many people prepare to speculate, but you are the first one who seemed genuinely curious. Seeing as you want to know as much as you do, I'll send you a tape in the mail. Check it within a week. It was a couple days or so when the tape finally arrived. It had the words "The True Story of Willy Wonka" written on it in black marker. The only other words on it were a copyrighted date 1963, a year before the book had come out. At first I thought this was strange considering VHS tapes were not around back then. Then it occurred to me that it was that had been on film and put on tape later. So I stuck the tape in and played after we wanted to make sure. It started out a bit odd. For one thing, it immediately into the title taken directly from the first edition book cover, with no fade. It just sort of popped in, causing me to jump. What also made me jump was what came after that. The delayed yet abrupt appearance of the music, which was loud and sounded like some fast, angry jazz music. Anyway, it went out to the credits and showed names I had never seen before. The only names I was able to recognize were Dolls, Bashir Niels, and some guy named John Black. It kept looping back to the name of the animation checker about 15 times. I genuinely thought there was something wrong with the tape. Right as I went to take it out, it popped immediately into the outside of the house of the buckets with the camera zooming in. The outside was really weird. It was black and white and had a odd, misty, cloudy look about it. Past Hatch, there was a deep male voice that seemed most likely to be the narrator, but his voice was in horrible quality. It was muffled and at such low volume that I could barely make out a word he was saying. It got inside the Buckets' house, and the misty, cloudy look was even weirder here. The people move all wavery, like they want to stop moving, much like those old Zelda CDI games. But the shading was crosshatched, which meant there was a lot of extra movement. Sometimes it was hard to make out what was going on. The characters behaved oddly. Saint Charlie was neither gay or highly effeminate as he spoke with a girly voice and spoke of his love for dolls and princesses. It seemed everyone feared Grandpa Joe. We found out later that he was involved in World War One. It is never explained how, but it seems clear he was responsible for ending it. Charlie's parents also displayed odd behavior. The dad seemed depressed, and the mom seemed paranoid and suffered from some major form of obsessive compulsive disorder. The other grandparents never spoke at all. From here on, it is not too different from the book, except for the characters and the fact that Charlie sings about his dress he wishes to wear. The story about Wonka is also slightly different. Apparently, he is a Grinch and happened to appear out of nowhere. Suddenly owning an impressive factory that no one saw built. Seems here no one worked in his factory, nor did it ever have any problems causing it to shut down. But when Charlie finds a ticket, it happens halfway through the finding. Also, we don't see any of the other kids giving their entries as they win, and the message on the ticket found in the book or any film adaptation is absent. In fact, the ticket is blank. No mention of it being gold, but it's black and white, so it is hard to tell anyway. So, anyway, the big day came and everyone's waiting at the gate. It's very similar to the book version, except there are six kids and Charlie is wearing his dress, and the lines spoken by the people are slightly changed from the book halfway through. There are talks of Wonka being a Grinch, how his factory got there and how they got made, and there was a story about Prince Pondicherry's death, having died drowned in Wonka's chalk palace. They talk about more stuff, Then it seemed the wind picks up, drowning them out. For nothing is ever seen blowing. There's just a sound effect of a howling wind. Then there are bells that chime for when it's time for the gates to open. Just like the book. Surprisingly, I can hear it over the loud howling wind, but it hits me that the chimes are not church bells that look like the book described. They're funeral bells. Very weird, but this is not the weirdest part. The weird part is Wonka himself. When the doors swing open, you can see a dark, shadowy figure standing at the doorway. And then Wonka comes out of the factory, hopping and prancing. He certainly does not appear human. But true, it is somewhat hard to tell due to the style of cross-hatching and the lack of color. Again, this isn't the weirdest part. The weirdest part is his eyes. He had a reptilian stare that quite actually sent chills down my spine. His hair kept moving. My guess was a constant motion and cross-hatching. It just moved like he was underwater. The wind was even louder now as he pranced and hopped down towards the gate. Once he arrived, he spoke. Strangely, I could hear his voice loud and clear, even though the cheering and talking from the audience was barely audible. His voice was high, like explained in the book, but not the kind of high voice I expected. He sounded like Michael Jackson speaking seductively. As normal, the kids had to show him their tickets. When he stuck down his pants, then they walk inside. It wasn't that different from the book, which from here on except for when they stared down the hallways, which looked like demented Tim Burton style artwork. They kept getting more narrow and kept slopping down more and more, the further they went. They also seemed to twist more as they enter each hallway. The weird part is that there is no dialogue here, except a line from Veruca about needing to use the loo, which her father tells her probably won't happen until the end of the tour. There's also a slow rising of the howling winds from earlier. I found it strange that such a thing would appear inside a factory. They enter an even more twisted and looped looking hallway with funeral bells chiming once again. The odd thing is that the Arso, once they enter his room, had changed completely, which, while still remaining cross-hatched and weirdly animated, it now fully looked like something Tim Burton might draw. The narrator from earlier also returned, but he was somewhat clear. I could tell it was the same voice clip from earlier, as I recognized a few of the same inflections. He didn't seem to have been talking about the buckets line, like the buckets, like I would have expected for the intro. I still found him hard to make out, but I managed to catch a few words such as Grinch, Wonka, and he went on to something about the Oompa Loompas. At this point, had goosebumps. I actually did not want to know what he was trying to say here, but I was still very curious. Then everything got interrupted by a long message found on the black screen with white text. The writing wasn't in another language. It looked like a odd mixture between Greek and Korean, but something I managed to look like a black adder ITC font. There was no sound at all here. Everyone was in total silence. For the howling winds show up abruptly. A couple minutes in, I decided to return to the show here, but it went on a few more minutes. Oh wait. I expected to return to the show here, but it went on a few more minutes before it returned back to the show. They returned to walk through the twisted halls. This one looking particularly messy with shadowy figures of Wonka and the gang walking through. It changed to a side view, and everyone is still black and shadowy, and Wonka was still hopping down until an abrupt change as the funeral bells sound again. Then he was walking slowly. The way he was walking reminded me very much of the Undertaker from WWF. It's like in the Ministry of Darkness days. Other than the obvious, what was also freaky about it was the fact that it happened abruptly with no traditional frames. There was again no dialogue aside from one of the kids, I assume a girl, saying, "I don't like this, Daddy." Suddenly, they walk into the chocolate room. No door or entrance. They just walk in. All sound is gone, and each one that actually shows up is distant and echoey. When they get in here, it starts to get really strange. The room looks eerily identical to the one in the 2005 Tim Burton film adaptation. It's not cross-hatched, but in what looks like a black and white painting style. The Chocolate River. This is one of the more unsettling moments because the river looks like real blood. The only color element in the entire film. Not blood done in realistic style, but as through someone actually dipped a brush to a cup of blood and ran a brush across those parts. What made it more unsettling is that the textures would change slightly with each frame. Quite unsettling, because how were they able to get so much blood to make up each possibly 700,000 or more pieces of paper? But that isn't the weirdest part. It gets worse. The room doesn't seem to function like normal as Wonka is not introducing anyone to the room nor showing them around. He starts speaking about the Oompa Loompas, a group of black Pajimis he had smuggled from Africa. Illegally, he adds. They are then shown, but the unsettling part is the fact that, unlike in the book, where they're happy, cheerful, and always singing and laughing, they look miserable. And each time they look at Wonka, they look terrified. They give him a look that basically says, "Please don't kill me." I actually heard one said that through. I couldn't quite tell if he said kill, as he was far away and was sobbing. Had more of a sound of act rather than kill. The camera from this point stayed at a bird's eye view. Wonka didn't yell angrily at the Oompa Loompas with a ridiculous loud voice. It was loud, high pitched, and screechy. I couldn't even understand him. He could have been speaking another language for all I know. Then he back to his guest and said something about them. That sounded so shockingly and despicably racist, but it continued to get worse. By the end, what he had ended up saying about them was just plain abysmal, as well as slightly terrifying. I won't even repeat it. It was so bad that even a white Serbist would be offended by it. Now I am also not that super sensitive. Politically correct type that thinks blacks can do no wrong, not racist either. But even I was distraught about what he had said. The salts were revealed to be racist. Not surprisingly, but even they were offended. Anyway, the old Viking boat arrived, but it has some odd reptilian designs about it. The gang got in, and I heard Rickard said, "Daddy, I want lots of things, but I do not want a dreadful boat like this." But that was all I could hear. The gang did talk, but their voices were drowned out by a group of crying Oompa Loompas and the overly loud sailing of the boat in a chocolate blood river. They ended up through a dark tunnel, and it was very close to the one in the film with Gene Wilder. You know, that psychedelic tunnel ride. I could barely make out what any of them were, as the style made everything look so convoluted. Verica Verica commented about her underpants being Trenton P. Elixir was another girl who spoke some of Violet's lines from the film. What is this, a freak out? I was really baffled as to who this was. Through, I also noticed Augustus was gone. Through, I assume he fell into the Chocolate River. Anyway, Wonka sang his rowling song like in the film. Through, he's singing closer to how Marilyn Manson sang it, but with extra vibrato. The fast, angry jazz music from the intro shows up once again. It seemed odd and out of place. I kept seeing the letters JB pop up in the background. John Black? And then the image become clear. The background images show Oompa Loompas crying and some are singing something in some kind of African language. Then Wonka's song starts turning into some kind of bizarre language. It sounds like some kind of Yiddish chat. So halfway through, where it starts to have a slight hint of German in it. His eyes get bigger, his mouth grows larger, and his teeth make a sudden change to being sharp and snake-like. Then it pauses right on his face for a few minutes, and the funeral bells return. The narrator from the beginning shows up again, but halfway through, rather than starting out from the beginning, his voice is now very clear. He mentions the Oompa Loompas being illegally smuggled from deep, dark forests in Africa, and what peaceful lives they live. But there was shocking mention of horrid things Mr. Wonka did to smuggle them. Again, I will not repeat them. He's about to speak about what happened to them and how the factory got there, but it immediately skips to a room where I can barely make out anything going on. Had no one said anything about it, I would never guess it was the inventing room. From here on it just keep skipping to different rooms. A child disappearing each time. Here, however, it seems no one knows how they disappeared. The sixth child. I still don't know who she is, but I think I heard someone refer to her as Miranda, unless that was the name of one of the parents, who was mostly unnamed in the book. But I'm sure they were referring to this mysterious sixth character. At least she spoke when the name was said, but there were funeral bells here, so it was hard to hear if she responded to them. Anyway, the last room they appeared in features Wonka making sick powder. The sixth girl does not seem very pleased about it. Wonka exits extremely angry about this and shouts angrily right in her face. Once again, loud, screechy, and unintelligible. The fact that it was not distant made it even worse. It sounds so loud it even echoed through the room. Then the girl runs inside the door to where it's being made. Then it cuts to Wonka's face, slowly zooming in closer and closer. He has a huge, rapish grin about him. Very spooky. I had to keep looking, but I had to see what was to come, so reluctantly did so. Some weird noises that resemble one of those creepy background sounds. Music? You're on something like the History Channel? Maybe you know what I am talking about. I heard. But they're kind of muted and muffled sounding. Wait. Wonka's face once it zooms closer starts to show some disturbing texture that look kind of like reptilian. It appears his eyes are slowly getting wider, his pupils slowly morphing to stilts, and his teeth once again become sharp and snake-like. And everything goes silent as the black screen with the white text appears once again, looking as last time, half Greek and half Korean. Then Wonka began to chant something what sounded like Yiddish. It was clearly a different chant than last time. Didn't show hints of German in it, a bit more so than last time. The text then flickered to an English translation, but it happened way too fast for me to stop it and read it. Then it went back to where it was, and it was still still picture of the group sitting around the room with nothing but funeral bells being heard. It lasted a few minutes, then it started to go in motion again. Once the funeral bells sounded, I then heard someone shouted, "Miranda!" So this is her name. Anyway, these two ran off into the room as Wonka stared down at Charlie. Honestly, I had practically forgotten he was here because he was barely shown throughout the whole thing. In fact, Violet and this mysterious Miranda girl were shown the most. I almost felt like Mike and Violet were not even in this one because their name was never spoken. I had also forgotten that he was in the dress. I probably thought it was Violet or something. I heard him speak again and remember he was gay slash highly effeminate. Wonka went on to tell him that won, but instead of taking him directly for the giant glass elevator or whatever, he told him to wait a minute. He then hop off into another room. He found every one of the other kids in here except for Miranda. He said something that I did not quite understand. It was English, but it had a rather convulsive meaning. The children lying down on the floor could be heard crying and moaning, similar to Oopa Loompas. The parents could not be seen anywhere. He then turned on the radio and slowly began to strip. The one thing that gave me goosebumps was what was playing on the radio. Luckily, it reminded me a lot of one of those songs you would hear in the old Mario game when you fight Bowser. Despite it being in that spickle style, you often heard during the early 60s, such as the Beatles and the Monkees, who has only one singer only. It's also sounded as rude the keyboardists did not exactly have to play it right. No, but that wasn't the weirdest part. The weirdest part is that now it's done distorted in like an old radio. Like it was from the 60s. It was more in the background, so it was a little hard to hear. Also because it wasn't super loud. Anyway, I couldn't pick out the exact lyrics, but did hear him mention some freaky crap that would happen to a bunch of different people by 2014. It was like a bunch of random names being spurted out, but he honestly seemed to know who they were. What they were going to have happened to them is too horrifying to mention. I don't even remember half of them. It took a second for me to sink back into the video as my mind drifted away, absolutely stunned by the music. When I did, I saw Wonka take off his shirt and throw it off, then finally slowly drop down to the ground. After that, the credits rolled. All sound was gone from here. Appearing again were the odd names from the intro. I kept it rolling to see if any came on after this, only to find a message placed at the end that seemed to have been put in later as the look, quality, and style of it had an early 90s feel to it. It read, "Don't let Felicity know." Then this tape stopped. I did not know who Felicity was until I looked it up and found out that was the name of Doll's second wife. As you may guess, I was quite shocked by what I had seen, but also really confused about what any of this was. I went and asked the person who had sent me this tape, who told me, honestly, this was how Doll had originally mentioned the book. He always made films of these books before he wrote them, so he could keep track of every idea he had, and also check and see if the lines that these characters spoken work outside of just being read. What happened from there and now how it ended up the way it was, I really did not know. I did not know him long enough, but I started to question the man after I got a hold of this tape. I did I didn't ask if this person wanted the tape, but they refused and seemed glad enough to get rid of it. Proof they did not want it to be gone forever. They still wanted the proof and information to stick around. Ever since I saw this tape, I have been looking around to see if I could get any information on it anywhere, and so far, I can't seem to find anything. So that was Willy Wonka beta tape, a lost episode creepypasta reading. And wow, what a way to end the Halloween month of my channel with this. In my final thoughts, it's a rather pretty interesting video, interesting story. Since this is more like I felt like a more of the darker. This one is like the darker version of the Willy Wonka movie and books and the Tim Burton film. And also, that I just like kind of remember while looking up that one YouTube video that something they say that the original version of Willy Wonka have had like 10 kids actually won the golden tickets and they gotta get freaking tortured by really effed up stuff. Maybe they felt like this is I think like that idea was just dropped because that felt way too dark for a book to be enjoyed by children. And yeah, I can see it. And also that ending about how this guy actually got the tape actually give it to this to the main narrator for the story. Like that's like a big mystery. And that whole Wonka become a lizard looking guy, the lizard thing. That's kind of strangely creepy. Maybe he's secretly a crocodile, and like maybe he's like King K. Rool all of a sudden from the past. You know, I think I need to make up like kind of really another two bizarre theories on is Wonka in the Willy Wonka ability secretly King K. Rool in disguise and such. Seriously, I don't want to go mad pat on just theorizing that crap. But anywho, hope you have a pretty good day, guys, and happy early Halloween. Bye bye.